Adrian, how we doing? We fueled him up on lunch. We've changed colors. We've changed everything.
Yeah.
Where are we at?
I'm still in the process of.
People should work harder. That's all I'm reading. I'm out of here. Never mind. People should work harder. Adrian, I don't know if you got it. So, coming up next, we're digging into a different topic. It's time to look at new session dedicated to innovation, and more precisely, how to design habit-forming products, with a 30-minute discussion with Nir Eyal that Eric will introduce in a minute.
Yes, and this interview will be conducted with my friend and colleague based in Singapore, Richard Bordenave, who is the CEO of BV Unique in Asia Pacific.
And Nir's recently relocated to Singapore too, so we have them from Singapore. So let's begin. See you soon.
Hi everyone, I am delighted to open a new session at the Human Advantage Conference about the key topic, innovation, with another great speaker, Nir Eyal, that I am going to introduce before I hand over the floor to my friend, Richard Bordenave, who is the CEO of BV Consulting in Asia Pacific, to continue our conversation. So, my intro about Nir. Nir Eyal writes, consults, and teach about the intersection of psychology, technology, and business. Nir previously taught as a lecturer in marketing at the Stanford Graduate School of Business and the S.O. Plattner Institute of Design at Stanford. Nir co-founded and sold two tech companies since 2003 and was dubbed by the MIT Technology Review as the prophet of habit-forming technology. So expectations here are very high. In addition to blogging at nirandfar.com, I highly recommend you to really register and follow Nir there. Nir's writing has been featured in the New York Times, the Harvard Business Review, Times Magazine, and Psychology Today. And Nir is really very famous because of two books that he has released. First one is Hooked, How to Build Habit-Forming Products, and more recently, Indestructible, How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. So, welcome, Nir. We are more than excited to have you at the Human Advantage Conference and to have this opportunity to talk with you about this key topic, how to build habit-forming products.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Nir. So, as you may know, Eric, that Nir was with us a couple of weeks ago at the Behavioral Science Network in Singapore, where he lives now, and he shared some fascinating insights on how to use habit loops for creating new products. So, to start with a short questions, could you tell us, Nir, why is it so difficult to actually create successful habit-forming products?
Yeah, why is it difficult to create habit-forming products? Because changing human behavior is really tough. And I'm sure I don't need to tell this crowd that. Anyone who has tried to build products or services to change behavior, what's so maddening about this is that even when people want to change their behavior, even when they want to use your product, even when they tell you what they need in the product, anyone who's built product knows that it is really difficult. People will say they want one thing, they do something else. They're not able to tell you their underlying preferences versus their revealed behaviors. All kinds of difficulty when it comes to figuring out how people will actually behave in the field. It's a very tricky thing to do.
So, fortunately, you've written a book called Hooked, and you've created the Hook model. And behind this model, there are a couple of components. Could you share with our audience, what builds a strong habit loop?
Absolutely. So the hooked model is a design pattern that we see repeated time and time again in all sorts of habit-forming products. And just to make sure we're straight on definition, a habit is simply an impulse to do a behavior with little or no conscious thought. So if we want users to interact with our product or service out of habit, to do it frequently enough so that the business model is sustained, we have to figure out how to get them to use the product with unprompted engagement rather than having to spend a lot of money on advertising or spammy messages. The whole idea is, how can we get people to come back to the product or service, not because they have to, but because they want to? And so what we see is embedded in all sorts of habit-forming products: online, offline, consumer web, enterprise, every conceivable industry that needs repeat engagement. We see the same 4 steps repeated again and again. Step number 1 involves a trigger. And there are 2 kinds of triggers. We have what's called external triggers, and these you'll be very familiar with. These are the pings, the dings, the rings, anything in our outside environment that tells us what to do next. That's the external trigger. We'll get back to the other type of trigger in just a minute. The next step of the hook model is the action phase. The action phase is defined as the simplest behavior the user can do to get a reward, okay? And so when it comes to the action phase, it's really about ease of use. It's really about decreasing friction. Anything we can do to minimize the distance between the recognition of the need and the satiation of the need, whatever we can do to reduce that friction, that's what we want to do in the action phase. The third step of the hook model is the variable reward phase, where the user's itch is scratched, where they get what they came for. And it turns out it's not just about rewarding the user, it's also about involving variable rewards. Variable rewards are about this concept of intermittent reinforcement, some kind of mystery, some kind of uncertainty around what the user might find the next time they engage with the product. Variable rewards come in 3 types. We have what's called rewards of the tribe, rewards of the hunt, and rewards of the self. And we see in all sorts of habit-forming products these variable rewards, whether it's a slot machine, right? The uncertainty of what you might win when you play a game of chance. Whether it's spectator sports, who's going to win the match, right? How's it going to play out? Whether it's the news, the first 3 letters of news, NEW, right? It's what's new, what's different, what we don't know. So we see this repeated time and time again. In every habit-forming product, you will find some element of this type of mystery, either a product that involves new amounts of variable rewards or that operates in a situation that is inherently variable, and we're giving the user greater agency and control over that variability. So that's the third step, variable rewards. The fourth and final step, and probably the most important of the 4 steps of the hook model, is what we call the investment phase. The investment phase is where the user puts a bit of work into the product, where they do something that improves the product with use. Because one of the central tenets of a habit-forming product is that, unlike things in the physical world, right, your clothing, your car, your couch, all of these things lose value. They depreciate with wear and tear. Habit-forming products should do the opposite. Habit-forming products should appreciate with use. They should get better and better the more we interact with them. So this can happen in a few different formats. It can be from data, right? The more data you give to a company, the better it becomes. If you think about a social networking platform or a personal finance software, the more data you put into the system, the better it should become at meeting your needs. Whether it's content, reputation, skill acquisition, anything that makes the product better and better the more we use it, that would be a form of investment. Anything that loads the next trigger and brings the user back again based on the work done into the product. Now, this brings us to where we started. That's why the hook model is a loop, where over time, through successive cycles through these hooks, this is where preferences are shaped, where tastes are formed, and how these habits take hold is ultimately when the product doesn't need an external trigger at all. The external trigger is almost like training wheels to get users down the hook model to begin with. But over time, the way we know that a habit is actually formed is when the user is triggering themselves in response to an internal trigger. So as opposed to an external trigger that's outside of the user, an internal trigger is a need that begins from within. And by and large, that internal trigger takes the form of a negative valence state, some type of uncomfortable emotion, whether that's loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty, stress, anxiety, some kind of uncomfortable emotional need that every time the user experiences, the response to that uncomfortable sensation is to habitually use that product and start sending them through the 4 steps of this hook model.
Excellent. So one of the challenges we see with habits is to sustain them in time. So obviously the loop helps that, but are there some tricks or tips for having stronger habits, particularly when your own will is not necessarily there? And for example, going to the gym, or there are a couple of things that you expect your new product to help for, and it's actually fighting every day against your own tendencies.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned going to the gym, for example. There, I could give you many, many examples, but you just mentioned this gym example. So one example pops to mind. There's a wonderful app called Fitbod, and Fitbod I encountered a few weeks after I wrote an article on my blog called "Why Your Fitness App is Making You Fat." And it was basically a takedown of what I'd seen in the industry as these terrible apps that I think were actively harming people. The way most, calorie counters and fitness apps work, the vast majority of them do not work for the vast majority of people. So I kind of went on this tirade denouncing these very poorly designed apps that I think, really do hurt people. And then someone sent me this app called Fitbod, and I started playing with it. And I just saw an uncanny clue inside the app that there was something about it that was really special. And I looked at the support button, the button that tells you how to ask for help in the app, and there was an email address there of the app makers. I sent them an email and I said, "Hi, my name is Nir Eyal. Have you by chance read my book, Hooked? Because I really like your app and I think it displays a lot of what I teach." I got a response back within 30 seconds from the CEO and said, "Yes, we read your book and we designed it based on the Hook model." And Fitbod really did some amazing things. One, changing people's health behavior is one of the most difficult behaviors to change. It's a lot easier to get people to check a marketing dashboard or to go onto some SaaS software, or there's a lot of much, much easier behaviors. Changing people's health behaviors is right up there with smoking. It's a tough one, right, to get people to go to the gym. But Fitbod really nailed it. And here's how I think they did it. The internal trigger is not what most fitness apps are. Most fitness apps, and this happens with many, many companies, doesn't matter the industry. What I've seen time and time again, the most common mistake is that people try and chew off too much, right? When I ask them, what's the behavior you want to change? What is the habit? The habit needs to be a discrete behavior. I met with a financial services company a few weeks ago, and I asked them, what's your habit? We want to get people into the habit of living a healthier financial lifestyle. That's not a behavior. That's an aspiration. What Fitbod did, they didn't want to make this mistake. They figured out a very distinct internal trigger that only a particular type of customer has. They decided to go after the person who already goes to the gym, but once they get there, they don't know what to do. Right? This was me. I would go to the gym and I would look at all these muscle heads and I'd have no clue what I'm supposed to do. So what are my options? I could just, do some of this, some of that and get nowhere, which is what was happening to me for years. Or I could hire a personal trainer, which is very, very expensive. Well, Fitbod realized that there was a hole in the market, and they realized this by tackling this internal trigger of uncertainty. Okay, it's a very specific internal trigger. It's not, ooh, I want a healthier lifestyle. I aspire to get in shape. No, it's when you're in the gym and you're uncertain, the scratch to that itch, the solution to that problem is open the app. That's the action phase. Just open the app. You open the app and here are the variable rewards. What do I do in the gym? How much weight should I put on the machine I'm working on? How many reps am I capable of doing once I actually do it? Those are all the variable rewards. And the investment is simply entering in what you did. Okay. When you do that, when you said, oh, okay, I did this many bench press and I did this much lifting, whatever the exercise might be. Once you type that in, you are loading the next trigger and storing value, because next time you go to the gym, it's already populated with what you should do on your next exercise. So if you did shoulders on one exercise, it says don't do shoulders again. Now this time do legs. And here's the exact exercises based on your gym and the available equipment you have, no matter where you are, of how many sets, how many reps, how much weight. So talk about a long-term habit. I've been using this product for years. I can't stop. Because for me, I can't do a workout without putting it into Fitbod, and I wouldn't even know what to do because Fitbod always tells me. So I've developed this long-term habit since I discovered this app, and I love it. It's done so much. I'm in the best shape of my life at 45 years old. I can't believe how well it's worked. And I'm not an investor, by the way. I have no vested financial interest in the company.
No, but you probably have a reward. What was the best reward you got from them?
The best reward? What do you mean, from using the app?
From the app. Does it deliver like any points or something that's encouraging you on top? No. So this is really important. So a lot of times you see, people think of rewards as gamification, and it's not. Now, I'm not anti-gamification, but tends to be
gamification is done improperly. It's done incorrectly. And here's when it's done incorrectly. Gamification, points, badges, leaderboards. Gamification tends to be what we call serving chocolate-covered broccoli. Serving chocolate-covered broccoli is when we have a behavior we want people to do, but they don't naturally want to do it, right? Broccoli doesn't taste so delicious. Chocolate's much more delicious. Well, then let's take chocolate and we'll put it on top of broccoli, right? Here, isn't it going to be delicious? No, chocolate-covered broccoli is gross. So that's what tends to happen when we gamify things that shouldn't be gamified. What should be gamified? We should gamify things when the internal trigger is boredom. When I'm bored, the right variable reward for that is entertainment, right? I need to be entertained. So gamification is wonderful. But what if I'm not bored? I'm uncertain. Well, then I don't need your stupid points and badges, right? I need to solve this problem of uncertainty. If I'm lonely, connect me with someone, right? That's why it's so important, first and foremost, to understand what internal trigger you're building for and then connect it with the variable reward.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So maybe we can move to Asia. I think you've seen there's a lot of super apps who are competing, be it in rail hiding or banks or a couple of others where the apps tend to copy each other with the same features and customers switching from one to the other because they get the same, roughly the same service, but they chase the best price or promotion. So can you perhaps illustrate how a product manager could use your habit loop models to prevent churn?
Yeah, so habits are one of many competitive advantages. It's not the only one, all right? You can have economies of scale. You can have brand. You can have intellectual property. You can have all kinds of competitive advantage. But it's incredibly important to have some kind of competitive advantage, what we call a moat around your business. Why is that so important? Because if you do not have a competitive advantage, if you do not have some kind of sustainable long-term moat, you're going to be fighting on price and features all day long. Right? You're just going to compete on price and features. And we know what that does. That gives you, very small margins over the long term. So you have to have some kind of competitive advantage. So by forming a habit, that's a huge competitive advantage. And if you need proof, take a look at Google. There's been studies done where we give people the search results of Google versus the number 2 search engine, Bing. And we have them look at these 2 search engine results, but we strip out the branding. So people can't see which one is Google and which one is Bing. And did you know it's a 50-50 preference split? People essentially can't tell a difference between the two. And yet Google owns 90-something% of the search engine market? Why? Google's not better, okay? No matter what the geniuses in Mountain View tell us, people can't tell the two apart. So why do we keep using it? It's because it's a habit. And that's what's so amazing about building a customer habit is that when you have a customer habit, they don't even consider the competition. When was the last time you said, "Ooh, I need to search for something. Who has the best search engine? Let me go compare." No, we Google it with little or no conscious thought. It's become a verb. And so that's the amazing power of building a habit is that you essentially capture the monopoly of the mind.
Great. So, well, another challenge we've heard recently a lot more after the COVID, there's a lot of digital transformation where brands have tried to get their customers to go online and do themselves a couple of things. And the challenge is now that the brick and mortar is becoming the competition. So how do we prevent customers to go back to the old habits of going to in-person meetings where they don't necessarily need that? I mean, and banks are struggling to get their do-it-yourself or self-help services being used by customers. So how do you break one old habit to move into a new one in a different space?
It's a terrific question, and this is very important because if you are the beneficiary of a habit, it's wonderful, right? If you're lucky enough to be one of these companies that has a solid habit, you're sitting pretty. It's wonderful. You can't rest on your laurels, right? You have to constantly make sure your hook doesn't break, and I can tell you about some examples where hooks do break. But what if you're the incumbent? Right? Or sorry, what if you're the challenger? You're not the incumbent. What if you're the startup that's trying to capture the competition's customer habit? Well, there are 4 ways to capture the competition's customer habit. The first way is greater velocity through the hook. If you can send people through your hook faster than the competition, that's one way to capture the competition's habit. So what does that look like? If you think about how Netflix killed Blockbuster, right? Think about back in the day. Remember like a few decades ago when Netflix wasn't streaming, they sent you these discs. Do you remember that? The red discs that they would send you in the mail? Well, compare that to what was the alternative, the existing habit. The existing habit was, okay, I get home from work. The internal trigger is I'm tired. I've had a long day. I just want to relax. Okay. Well, now I have to find my keys. I got to get in my car. I got to go to the Blockbuster. I got to see what movies they have. I got to pick a movie. I got to see, do I have my membership card, pay for the movie, drive back home, put it in the DVD player, and hopefully the movie will play. Think about that compared to what happens when I come home from work and there's this beautiful red packet sitting on my kitchen counter. And all I got to do is pick it up and put it in the DVD. It doesn't even matter if it's exactly what I want to see that day. It doesn't actually matter that much. The point is it was just so easy. I could get through the 4 steps of the hook way faster with Netflix versus Blockbuster. So even way before it was streaming, Netflix was going to, Blockbuster was in big trouble because of how easy it was to pass through the 4 steps of their hook. Now, that's one method. So faster velocity through the hook. So the second way to capture the competition's customer habit is greater velocity through, sorry, let me do that again. So the second way to capture the competition's customer habit is greater frequency of use. So the first way is greater velocity, right? Sending the users through the hook faster. The second way is if you can get them to engage more frequently throughout their day. So if you look back at why did Mark Zuckerberg buy Instagram? Right? And he bought it for $1 billion. And at the time, everybody thought that was ridiculous. $1 billion for this stupid photo app. Oh my God. I was in the Valley when this happened. Everybody thought it was a bad idea. Everybody thought it was a big waste of money. But Zuckerberg knew what he was doing. You know, today, if Instagram was separated from Meta, it wouldn't be worth $1 billion. It'd be something close to $35 billion. I think it's actually worth much more than that, but that was the latest Wall Street estimate. So it was a deal of the century, right? He had an amazingly good deal there, and he had some real foresight because what he understood was that Facebook was built mobile first, right? Facebook was built around, 2006 or so. This was before the iPhone even existed. When he designed it in his dorm room, it was built for a laptop, right? A desktop setting. Instagram was mobile first. And he realized that that was the key habit. It was the scrolling of the feed. So what Instagram did, and what was a competitive threat to Facebook, was that people could engage more frequently throughout the day on their phones than on their desktop. So he had to buy Instagram because he knew that his habit was threatened. So number 1 is velocity. Number 2 is frequency. Number 3 is to make the reward more rewarding. And this is very rare. This is really hard to do. We know that it takes a product has to be not just better, can't be incrementally better than the existing habit. It has to be 9 times better to break the inertia of a habit. And so it's very rare, but every once in a while we'll see a product that's just so revolutionary, that's so different that it threatens the current habit. The fourth way is to make it easier to get into the hook in the first place. So if you can find some way to get users into your hook, for example, if you think about how Microsoft Office used to be the most widely used enterprise software in the world. Today it is not. Today it is Google Docs. Well, what was Google Docs' big innovation? The big innovation was that it was hosted in the cloud for free. That was brand new. Remember, we used to have to go buy these disks, pay for them, right? Put them in our computers. And that was a lot of friction in between the habit and the user. And so what Google did, even though it had just a fraction of the features that Microsoft Office had, if you were a startup founder and you just needed a spreadsheet, or you're a student and you just need a word processor, well, you could start using it immediately without money and without any software. Right? That was a big innovation. So Google Docs today is the most widely used enterprise software because getting into the hook was so much easier than the existing incumbent. So those are the 4 ways: greater velocity, greater frequency, make the reward more rewarding, or make it easier to enter the hook.
Thank you very much. So just to touch on another topic that you actually had in your first book, a section about ethics of persuasive design. And your second bestseller is actually focusing on helping individuals to become indestructible. So it seems there is a struggle for product manager to balance this desire to create compelling new products and also the need to protect users' well-being. So how do you think they can strike this balance ethically? Like, how do they do that without compromising with their own goals?
Yeah, so this is super important. So important that it's always been part of my work. In the very first edition of Hooked, there was, or there is, still is, a whole section called The Morality of Manipulation. And I think a good lens to think about this is to differentiate between the two kinds of manipulation, right? We always think of manipulation as a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's either good and bad. Here's the example. How can manipulation be good? If you go to a movie theater, you know that those actors are paid to fake it, right? We want them to manipulate our feelings. In fact, those flickers of light is a big illusion that makes us think that there's actually something going on the screen. It's just an illusion. We want to be manipulated. We will pay for the privilege to be manipulated in certain situations. The difference is that there's two kinds of manipulation. There's what's called persuasion, and the opposite of persuasion is what's called coercion. Okay. And these are at opposite ends of the ethical spectrum. Persuasion, we should do much more of. What is persuasion? Persuasion is helping people do things that they themselves want to do, but for lack of good product design, don't do. Right? So if we can help persuade people to exercise, to eat right, to be more productive at work, to spend more time with their kids, to accomplish any of the goals that they themselves desire to accomplish, that's great. We should persuade them more. We should manipulate them more in this way to help them accomplish the goals that they have for themselves. What we should not do is to coerce people. Unlike persuasion, which is about helping people do things that they themselves want to do, coercion is getting people to do things they did not want to do, things that they will later regret. And that is not only unethical, it's bad for business. If you coerce someone into doing something, not only will they not do business with you ever again, but they're going to tell all their friends on social media also not to do business with you. So I think that's a pretty good test. There's some others as well. We can go into them in further depth if we have time around how we should think about it as individuals, how we should think about it as companies, and then how we should think about it as a society and a government. There are different frames, but I think that's a useful model to think through.
I think we have still two questions, so I'll move to the next one to save some time. And so one last question from me before I pass the baton to Eric is, well, anyone can know AI is going to change everything. But if we think about the habit loops, what do you think are the next consequences in the habit model that will be like driven by AI?
Yeah, so I want to say real quick, it's a little bit off topic, but I hate the nomenclature artificial intelligence. I think it gives it way too much weight. I think because people equate intelligence with consciousness, it is not. It is not. I think it's much less sexy and much more accurate to call it machine learning. Right? An LLM, ChatGPT, it's machine learning. It's not really intelligent, not in the way that people think consciousness and taking over the world and robots. But that's neither here nor there. I'm just trying to spread that message that we should be a lot less fearful about this technology. And I think if we called it by a different name, people would be a lot less scared of it. How does this all change the future of product development and behavioral design? We are going to see a real inflection point here, I think, coming up when it comes to the investment phase of the hook. What do I mean by that? That if the investment phase is all about helping the user store value in the product, helping the product become more and more valuable for the user over time, anytime that we can personalize, that we can customize, that we can improve the product for a market size of one for each and every user, that's going to make the product more and more valuable with use. So that is now going to be possible on a massive scale, that we can start customizing user experiences because of these large language models, because of machine learning. We are going to be able to customize it. And I think companies that don't do it are going to be left in the dust. People are going to start expecting products to be customized. And so that's where we're going to see a real revolution when it comes to habit formation, is that these products are going to start remembering your preferences, your tastes, your goals, your ambitions, and they're going to help you achieve these goals by helping create the product that persuades you along the path you want to take so that you ultimately accomplish your goals. And that's going to provide a level of customization and personalization that we've never seen before.
Thank you, Nir. I think it's time for Eric now for the last question.
We are at the end of our conversation. Unfortunately, I think it was really very insightful, but I would like to ask you a final important question for our audience. We have quite a lot of product manager, brand manager, chief innovation officer registered in this specific session to hear from you. what are your final tips and also maybe pitfalls to avoid that you could share to help them to be successful at creating a habit-forming product?
I think that the best and most important thing you can do is to understand your consumer needs, not on a functional level, but on a psychological level. I think far too many companies, especially the ones that are kind of led by technical people, they tell me, when I say, what's the user need here? They tell me all the functional needs, right? Our user needs to do that. And that's why we have this amazing technology and this whiz-bang feature. But when I say, yes, but what's the psychological need? What's the emotion? They haven't a clue. So if you and your team can't tell me what is that feeling that your product is addressing, you're flying blind, right? Because remember, we only use every product or service for one reason. There's only one reason we use every product or service. And that one reason is to modulate our mood, to feel something different. We want to be taken out of one state to a different emotional state. But I think far too many companies, they just think about the bells and whistles, the features, the price, as opposed to asking themselves, really, what's at the core here? What's the psychology behind why the product would use why the user would use the product in the first place? And so if we can get our teams to not only understand how important that is, but start using this vocabulary, that's actually the best thing my book can do for a company, is help get everybody on the same page when it comes to, what do we mean when we say triggers? What does it mean when we say is the action easy? What does it mean when we say variable rewards? What is the investment phase? Having that common vocabulary takes a lot of these concepts that people have heard about and puts it into a framework that we can put up on the whiteboard and put to good use.
Thanks a lot. That's wonderful. Maybe, Nir, you could share with our audience where they could know more about your work or follow you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. So my website is called nirandfar.com. Nir is spelled like my first name, N-I-R, and far.com. And my two books, Hooked, How to Build Habit-Forming Products, and my second book, which is about how to break bad habits. We didn't talk about it too much today, but everybody's struggling with distraction these days. So if you want to become indistractable, how to break those bad habits, that book is available as well. And thank you so much. This was a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Great. So I see some of our guests are here for the next roundtable, but I just wanted to let you know that we've had over 1,957 people log on today, and we see you. I know our colleagues Hélène and Bertrand have been speaking to you online from Mumbai, from Marrakesh, from Milan, from Minneapolis, my home state. So glad to see all of you guys online. We appreciate you being here, and we love your questions coming through in the chat. Now our roundtable of this session about innovation with, again, great speakers. So I welcome Judith Rouquayrol. Judith is Director of Consumer Evaluation for Makeup and Color Science at L'Oréal. Laurence Picard. Laurence is New Usage and Behavior Director in Danone Research and Innovation. Hi. And Alex Peters, who is Global Purpose Director Lead at Reckitt. So welcome.
Thank you.
So this roundtable will be moderated by our colleague Clément Dargent, who's the Managing Director of Pearson Vivo France.
Clément Dargent.
Oh.
Just a short lesson.
I'm learning. And as you know, this will be a 30-minute conversation. Alex will be dialing in from online, and then we will have 10 minutes of question and answer that Clément will be leading. You'll see the questions there. Hi, Alex. Good to see you.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Thank you, Eric and Ted, for the introductions. Very happy to be here to lead this discussion. Maybe I should sit here. Yeah. Sorry. Very happy to be here to lead this discussion about innovation, and not only innovation, but sustainable innovations. And while innovation is difficult, we know that sustainable innovations is even more difficult for some reasons that our guests are going to explain today. So I would like to start with Judith, because Judith, you work at L'Oréal, so you work on cosmetics, and we know that changing habits in cosmetics is particularly difficult. So can you tell us how you identify barriers and how you try to make people change, while we know that in reality it's very hard to change, even though they say that people, they say that they want to change, they say that they want to change the world?
Yes. Not sure to be very, very original with my start, but honestly, in life, every change is very difficult because it supposes an effort, an important effort. It's not automatic. And probably in the universe of beauty and personal care, this effort is particularly complex because when you take a shower or when you take a moment to shave your beard, Clément, or to put makeup, Laurence, it's really a moment for you, a moment of deconnection. And having an ecological behavior is necessarily today accompanied by social load, by mental load, social responsibility. And in fact, it's not very compatible with deconnection. So it's difficult. And it's probably the reason why we observe with very classical auto-administrated questionnaire a very, very important green, yes, it's totally different. Green say-do gap. We very quickly identified, in fact, this gap by comparing, for example, our sales of cosmetic solid and or eco recharge, for example, with attitudinal question. There was an important gap, and when we ask to our consumer about beauty purchase choice criteria, for example, for the eco conception of product or the recyclability is and still remain in the lowest priority, far from the ingredient, the fragrance, the density of the foam for shower gel, for example. And to be honest, because we are all purchaser and user and consumer of beauty products, when we are in a store and you have to choose between a very classical shampoo like this in a plastic bottle and to switch with that, which is a solid shampoo, it's not very easy, in fact, honestly. It's not easy because first, for example, one of the drivers when you have to choose a shampoo is the fragrance. And it's very easy to open it, and the bloom is wow. And even if we plan a little hole on this package in order to test the fragrance, but as you can see, the hole is very, very little and not totally intuitive, I think, for the consumer. It's not easy too because it's a little bit difficult to plan to use this product on very long hair. So it's not a problem for me because I don't have very long hair, but my daughter has, for example. And the majority of the Gen Z has very long hair. So it's not easy too. It's not easy to plan how to store this at home once started, in fact. Not totally easy. And the final problem is that it's not easy for us to use this very, very small surface to answer to all those questions and to give all the good information about use, about fragrance, about storage. And in most cases, when you faces a lot of question and a lot of interrogation, and you are not sure exactly of the smell, the use, the storage, in fact, you choose the ease, and you choose the classical one and the usual product.
So how do you change that for those who shave, for example? How do you observe people? How do you make sure that, you know, that you're going to change their habits?
We absolutely need to be helped by retailers, in fact. to display in a different way than the classical our new product, because they are little and because you use it as a communication vector is difficult. So we need to work hand in hand with the retailers in order to create and to innovate the right merchandising in order to help consumer and purchaser to make the switch between the classical product.
So it's a question of working on the whole value chain to make sure that everyone is aligned in the final outcome. Laurence, do you have any examples in the food business? So you work at Danone.
Yeah. So I would say that it's the same for food. For beauty, you have the pleasure, the pleasure to use it. But for food, it's also a question of taste before sustainability. And convenience is key as well. And obviously price, it's a key motivation. So people have to deal with these different aspects and dimensions, and they have to trade off. And that's why it's quite difficult. The choice is complex with all the logo and all the claims and everything, and we know that it's very complex for the consumer. And that's why there is this say-do gap. We know that in food and beverage, only 10 to 20% of the people do what they say. Do what they say, exactly. Because when it comes to buy a product which is more sustainable, they have a price, taste, and convenience, which can be barriers for this sustainable product.
So how do you reduce that gap? You don't ask questions anymore, you observe people?
Yeah, for sure. And that's why behavioral science is key, because we are pushing a lot on observation. We are pushing a lot on saying that the context is key, because when you are designing sustainable products, and we are talking a lot about design, because we have to start very early in the conception of the product and be user-centric when you think about this, creating these new usages. So observe the users from the beginning. So we are using a tool which is the user journey, which is when they buy it, when they transport it, when they store it, when they use it, when they put it in the bin. So it's all about the end of life of the product. And this is key to observe the users and the different touch points. And when you're talking about triggers, this is where maybe you can change some behaviors. First, you need to deal with the pain points, because there are many pain points in some of these new products. And once you have dealt with these pain points, you have to work on these delights and motivations, but you also have to find the trigger which might help people to change and adopt this new product.
Okay,
so this is very, it's all about observation, because as Judith was saying, people are saying, okay, I'm going to do it, but then they have to face with different questions and pain points that may prevent them to use the product.
So it's a balance of asking the right questions, not too many, but still observing people. It's really...
when you're asking, why asking questions?
You don't ask questions anymore?
No, we do it because we need to understand the motivations, but I would say that observing the context is as well very key. So for instance, when we're working on plant-based yogurts, we know that the context and the reference of the people are dairy yogurts. Okay, so, and what is important in dairy is the texture, is the taste, obviously. So although people are saying, okay, plant-based is good for health and it's good for the planet, in the end, if the taste is not preferred or is not well perceived, and the texture as well, it's going to be something which is going to be not adopted by the consumer. So we have to know the occasions. We have to know with which products, or maybe cereals, or I don't know, with fruits, they are mixing their products. So know it's very, very scrutinize and observe what they do to make sure that you will find this trigger that might help people to adopt a new taste as well, because this is key.
So since you talk about triggers, I'd like to ask Alex, because Alex, you told me about interventions and nudges for sustainability that you have helped create and improve with behavioral science. Some of them are around water consumption. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think innovation plays a really important role. in that it provides a tool that enables a behavior. I've actually just now signed up to Fitbod, and for me, that's going to be a tool that's going to enable me to do better with my fitness. But I already knew where I was starting from. I knew what I wanted to achieve, and I needed a bit of help getting there, and a tool can be the thing that does that. But fundamentally, we each have different reasons why we aren't making the changes, or even lack of awareness that a change is needed. That means that a tool alone and innovation alone isn't always going to be enough by itself. We found, just as we heard just now, that it's really important, therefore, to get to the truth of what's actually going on today. What are the actual behaviors that are happening? What are we seeing through observation happening in the real world? And how can we make that as real as possible? Just the very presence of observation, the questions that get asked alongside the observation, begin to change the behavior and disrupt the data we collect. So we're really keen to get sort of a bit closer to that. Let me give an example, like you asked for there, of how we wanted to drive behavior change for water saving here in the context of dishwashing. For Reckitt, dishwashing is our brand Finish, and that's an automatic dishwasher. So I'm talking about people using the dishwasher at home for those that have them. We already had the research that shows us that using the dishwasher when you do have one can be a big water saving versus doing hand washing. But the observations we did showed us that what was going on in the real world, that even people with dishwashers were still doing a hand washing step. They were still washing the dishes partially by hand in a sort of pre-rinse before putting them into the dishwasher. And we observed that behavior, saw it happening, but also wanted to make sure we made it into a tangible thing that makes a difference. So we wanted to measure how much water is involved. And we were able to do that using a couple of techniques, the first one of which was to use water meters attached to kitchen taps. So combined with the more traditional diary study, we do still ask questions as well to understand what's going on, but the water meters on the kitchen taps gave us an exact measurement of how much water is getting used on these occasions. And it might sound like small fry, that you're not going to get such a big impact from a quick pre-rinse of the dishes, but we found that while it varies by geography, we could be talking about 40 litres wasted per occasion here. Which adds up quickly over time when you consider how often people have to wash the dishes. So we got to that truth of the understanding of the behavior, but we wanted to go deeper still. We wanted to make sure that now we know how much is being used, how can we change that behavior? Starting from knowing what's actually going on was really powerful, because then you can ask the right kind of questions, the right kind of probes, or find the right ways to observe to understand what could be barriers to that. So for example, a barrier might be, I lack the faith that the product is going to deliver sufficient cleaning power if I haven't done that pre-rinsing. That's where innovation comes in. That's where we can then say, okay, well, we've innovated, we've designed products that we can reassure you are going to work effectively under the circumstances that we want to see them used in. And FYI, from a behavioral and habit forming point of view, we're actually asking you to do one less thing. We're not asking you to do one more or make the world more complex. We're saying you can skip a step and simplify your lives by following the process we want to. To close that one out, I really think then we wanted to make sure it actually works in the real world. It's great to have a theory of how you change these things, whether we can overcome those barriers. We used interventions like pledges. We used timely reminders using our packs for the moment of usage to get people keeping this top of mind. And we were able to show through that and other activations around this message, skipping the pre-rinse, that we were able to create a 20% reduction in household water usage. And again, we measured that somewhat indirectly by using people submitting voluntarily their water bills to us. So it's not based on claims or questions, but based on actual water usage consumption. I think that helps us show that through the combination of the product as the enabler and through the message there, that we are able to drive a connection to those two. So it's not just about driving the ROI for the user in terms of getting clean dishes, saving water, helping the world, but also for their wallet because water is costing them money, but also for us. It's directly tied to the product we're offering. And so you have our business objectives going hand in hand to delivering that. That's the final step here, is that sort of win-win-win. We want companies to succeed. We want the people that use our products to succeed. And we want the planet to be a winner as well. And innovation is one of the levers we can pull to make that happen.
Alex, I have a very specific question. So you have identified barriers, you have identified ways of changing behaviors, but how do you communicate this on a large scale? Is it on the packaging? Is it communication, advertising?
Yes, I think it's about multiple levers there. In the cases of the one I'm talking about here, particularly in Turkey, where we've had great success with this, we've done a combination of above-the-line TV commercials, but also partnerships with groups like National Geographic, for example, where we've done documentaries about the wastage of water happening in the country. And we even partnered with a stock exchange to have water listed as a commodity on the stock exchange to show the shortage of water happening in Turkey, which is a really powerful way of bringing that to the front of people's minds, that water is not just something that flows freely, but something that needs to be valued, and changes the dialogue, changes the way people think about it. So it is a combination of multiple levers to maximize our ability to change that behavior.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, it's again a question of the whole value chain that we need to change. So I'd like to explore this a little bit more with you guys. So, because we know that truly innovating sometimes means truly change the way we innovate and the organizations think about innovation. And so we've just seen innovating, especially around eco-friendly types of product, may mean to engage with people, which means in one way consumers, but also stakeholders in a completely different way. So it's also using B-side in the way B-side to change the way our organizations think. So Judith, we talked a little bit about how you interacted with retailers before, but that made me think of a research that you did with PRS in Vivo, where you had in the room both your classical stakeholders, I would say, marketing, CMI, but also retailers, so that you could change the whole value chain. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, of course. We are convinced that to change deeply consumer usage and purchase habits, we have to redesign the conception of the product, but as I already said, to rethink too the way to display this product. And we are not our own retailers, so it seemed very essential for us to collegially think with retailers the best way to display the product and to help the purchaser to better know and have the good reflex in order to switch the famous classical product with a more eco-concepted product. And if I take again this example, in fact, in mass market channels, the products need to be sufficient to themselves, in fact, because there is no beauty advisor in order to help the choice. You are alone, and the product is alone too, to convince you to buy it. That's why it seems really essential to work with our retailers, and we decide, in fact, to invite to a nudge workshop a FMCG French retailer and 3 key people in this organization, the CSR manager, the merchandising manager, and the beauty purchasing manager, in order to be sure to design the right product, but that they have the right way to display it. And for example, and with my little hole, in order to test the product, maybe we decide to not put it on the back, but on the front, because when they are in the shelf, it's probably more intuitive for the consumer to see it in the front. And this experience with a retailer around the table with the other team of the organization was really a good one, because it was very operational. And it was a real collaboration and transparent share of ideas and innovation, in fact.
So that makes it very concrete, very tangible,
Yeah,
and it's also an opportunity to strengthen the relationships that you
Of
have
course,
with
of
retailers.
course.
Yeah. Alex, it's a personal journey, right, that you had to take to start infusing B-side within the organization, within your organizations, to innovate better. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sure thing. This is a really fun one to answer in a way in this forum, because actually we tried to leverage some behavioral science techniques to embed behavioral science within the organization. If I give maybe a couple of examples of that, I'm sure most people here are familiar with the IKEA effect, where things that you build yourself have more value to you. So what we've tried to do is not just deploy, here's what you should do, but actually build together with our teams the approaches they want to take. So while we might create some broad frameworks and approaches that they can fit into, the behavior changes that our brand leaders are trying to drive, the difference they're trying to make in the world through their brands, are things that they are arriving at themselves and that we're building together as part of a process there, so that people are really proud of the outcomes they're achieving. It's about getting everyone excited at the same time so that we have that. And then the second point is that we've been lucky as well to have some really great buy-in from senior leaders in driving this change using behavioral science. And that's meant we've been able to do things like showcasing in internal town halls the progress that people have made in leveraging behavioral science, or even having people like myself, but also other members of our organization who aren't working in specialist roles like mine, who are working on the brands themselves, speak at forums like this about what they're achieving, getting that wider visibility. That, to me, is another behavioral science approach, because what we're doing is we're creating a sort of social movement there within our organization, where you get recognized by your peers for what you're achieving, called out for your successes, you get the exposure across the business in a positive way, and it inspires those around you to want to have that same opportunity and that same effect. And that brings people knocking on my door, asking, how can I help them to have that same kind of impact, that same kind of sort of change within the organization. So for me, I would love to find other ways to do it, but really leveraging behavioral science to drive behavioral science has been a lot of fun.
Is it easy or difficult to have support from leadership? How did you do that?
Yeah, great question. I think it was easy in our case because we are trying to drive a combination of what I was describing earlier. We're trying to drive bigger societal impacts, and we're trying to drive the fit back to our brands and what we're selling. And so it's a win-win. And I think that everyone is passionate about driving for a more sustainable future, and everyone is passionate about having that commercial success as well within the organization of Reckitt, and therefore we're in a lucky place. However, not everyone might find themselves having such luck, and I think that when the senior leadership are not on board, the opportunity is to convince them using the examples of where you're showing how much impact this can have. And for me, not just showing the impact of the work that's done within Reckitt, but also showing how behavioral science gets applied more broadly to issues of public health, for example, and in a much wider sphere, has also helped to inspire those people who are perhaps sitting on the fence and saying, okay, wow, this is really powerful stuff. We don't want to miss the boat there.
So it's a question of people, it's a question of ego as well sometimes. And when we say people, it's consumers, it's stakeholders, it's management, is everyone. So in the end, I think we need to make it easy for them. We need to convince them that it's going to work. Laurence, maybe to finish with you, do you have any concrete examples on how you put people at the center of the thinking and how you leveraged easiness to make it happen?
I think that, I was talking about design. I was saying that if we want people to adopt new usages, we have to make it as easy as possible. And so, because it is a quite challenging aspect, we are pushing all our engineers, especially pack engineers, but anybody in our R&I center, for instance, in Gif-sur-Yvette, to come and co-design with users, because we say you design for users and with users. What does it mean? We are creating, it's like the baby steps, okay, but how do I deal with users? We have created what we call a consumer space, where we say, okay, this is where you're going to meet people, meet users. You will co-design with them, and we have also started programs like how do you connect with users very easily, and we train people, so Danoners who are not consumer researchers, to talk to users, even digitally, so that they can have 3 interviews on their specific project and they connect with users. We are pushing them to observe them And so we are pushing this user journey tool, which is very visual, and everybody can understand, marketing people, engineers, everybody can use this tool to understand the full system. And when we're talking about the value chain, is okay at store, in use, out of home, different occasions, and understand how people are using your specific product, and think about a solution, think about the full experience. And so observation and user journey is very useful and a very easy tool, I would say, for user centricity. This is my big bet, is to really push it throughout the organization.
Okay, thank you. And if you guys had any advice to give to our audience on how to push behavioral science to help with developing sustainable innovations, what would they be? I don't know who wants to answer this one. Maybe.
I can quickly jump in there if that's helpful. Happy to answer that. I'll keep it short, but I just think it's really important to get people involved early. It comes back to what I was saying before with the IKEA effect, that if people are building it together, they're going to be more excited about it and more keen. If you bring people in right at the start, and as broad a group of people as possible. So in my world, I work in insights. So if the obvious audience is the insights audience, but making sure I've got R&D, making sure I've got marketing, making sure I've even got the sales organization helping to build out what we're creating, starts to get people, even if it's baby steps, just starting to understand it. The door is then open. You've got the foot in the door, and you can start getting people more and more sold into the approach. So starting early, rather than having everything perfect from day one, but actually getting people to build it with you, is a really powerful way of helping to get this implemented.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you. So we will now open the floor to questions. Do you in the room have any questions to our guests today? Don't be shy. There is one question for Judith. It's the first one. So, Judith, what do you think about the value that the consumer gives to sustainable packaging? Is real, is important, or the price limits the success of that type of packaging?
It's very difficult as a question because, as I already said, in fact, objectively, today, the recyclability of a pack or the eco-conception of a pack is not a real important criteria of choice. And moreover, I think that today consumer consider that it's normal and it's not something is ready to pay more for that. So it's very difficult because in the reality, all those change are priceless. In fact, it's not the same when you do that and when you do that. It's not the same process of on an industrial way. So, but the consumer today is not ready to pay more for an eco-concept product. So we really need to find another thing to accompany the eco-conception. Eco-conception alone couldn't be okay to be more.
So they're not willing
expensive.
to pay. They're not willing to pay more for something that is
they
supposed
consider
to
it's
be natural.
just normal
Exactly.
today.
Do you want maybe to react to that, because you brought a product that is eco-designed?
Yeah.
Because it's right. It's only paper. You told me.
Yeah. I think that it was just to showcase the dilemma, the sustainability dilemma, because today, for instance, people are talking a lot about paper-based packaging, saying that it is more sustainable. But when you start to develop this type of product, we notice that they have many barriers. And again, when you observe the usage of these products, you see that people have some pain points. And the idea is to help people to design products like this one to make sure that all these pain points are totally disappeared. So, for instance, the barriers in the stackability on fridge, because it's a multi-serve product, so it should be better for the planet. But people have many barriers in terms of hygiene, for instance, and stackability, in terms of transport, the flimsiness. So it's lots about psychology and sensorial experience as well. And that's why we were talking about insight. I would say inside community, so we are all talking about insight. But today, I think that for these specific products, we should be more focusing on user experience, because when you are focused on how people are going to use this product, and you consider the full system, and you consider the shopper experience, and then you consider the user experience and the end of life of the product, then you start to really tackle all the triggers and all these barriers. And it's quite tricky today, because as you were saying, it's not only us, it's retailers, and we have to work all together, and we have to work with also our competitors to make choices which are sustainable choices, more easy to access, and actually as well the best choice for the people. So
that makes me think of another category, which is bottled water, where they are making the plastic even thinner than before, but now that creates some issues in terms of stackability, in terms of shipping the product, because it's too thin.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's not only a question of making it easy for consumers, but also like feasible in like all the aspects of the value chain again.
Yeah, so for these challenges, you're gonna think about again multi-serve usage beyond single-use usages, and so here you are talking about new usages. And again, okay, you have to create a context where people will be okay to change their usages, and you have to help them to adopt these new usages. And so this is how behavioral science can really help us.
Alex, do you want to react to that?
I think that the reality in the broader sense around things like packaging is that consumers are, and people, and by people I mean everyone, it's a very complicated sphere to navigate, because there is so many different ways that packaging can be good, and I say good like this, or bad, because there are different things going on. Made from recycled materials versus recyclable. Or this is post-consumer recycled plastic, but this is aluminium. It's very hard for people to make a trade-off between which of each of those things is actually the more or most sustainable. It can sometimes be more obvious when you're talking about things like entirely paper. I think people intuitively understand that that can be beneficial, but still there's a lot of different things that are playing together that make it hard for people to truly understand how they make a difference. On top of that, you've got the reality of the world that even when things are recyclable, they aren't always getting recycled. And therefore, while it might on paper look like the best option, it may not play out that way in the real world. You have to truly understand the behaviors that follow the usage, that follow the purchasing. So that's kind of my 2 cents there, is that it's a very complicated field. And behavioral science can be one of the tools we can use to unlock what in real life turns out to have the most beneficial impact.
Does this work? Yeah. Just a question maybe for Alex, but actually everybody. I was thinking of Nir's intervention just earlier when he was talking about finding what's the right psychological trigger you're trying to solve for your product. And in the context of products that are, eco-sustainable, I'm wondering, based on your research, Alex, how much when you build such product or services, are you trying to say, well, no, people are really intrinsically motivated to do things that are, and buy products that are sustainable, so we don't need to come up with different features or make things easy, we just need to sell the product and the fact that they're sustainable as the core feature? Or how much trying to say, no, that's not enough, and actually we've got to make the things easier, cheaper, and how do you balance that tension? And I say that quickly because I work in ethics, and sometimes people tend to justify the work we do because it's good for business, where I always try to say, no, it's just, there's no need to justify. So how much are you trying to justify some of the product feature versus how much are you just saying, no, they're just eco-friendly and that's why you should buy them. Hope that makes sense as a question.
No, it does make sense, the question. Thanks for asking it. I'll give it a go. I think that there's a subset of people, because no two people are alike. There's a subset of the population who are very active in driving sustainability, and for whom the message that it is sustainable can sometimes be enough to push you over the edge from a maybe into a purchase, into a usage. But for the vast majority of people, we recognize that there are a lot of complex things going on. Right now, we're experiencing it, all of us, we're experiencing a cost of living crisis, and it means that people are having to make very conscious decisions about where they spend their money. And sustainability is one of many competing elements that has to deliver there. In fact, there's no use having a sustainable product that can't deliver the benefits it needs to just by virtue of being sustainable. The core benefit of that product needs to be the first thing that gets delivered. So for us, it is absolutely about finding the win-wins. It's about things that deliver all the expectation you have without the extra price and with the benefit to the world around us, is the way that we need to aspire to reach and to make as much effort towards as possible. And it absolutely is achievable. There are even cases where the product may come at a parity cost, or even maybe it has a premium, but through the way that you use it and through what you do, you're able to save water, or you're able to save energy. Think about turning the temperature down on the laundry, for example, can be a big energy saver, which has a financial implication and means that in net, you can be saving money rather than spending money. So it is absolutely important. I don't think that the vast majority of people today are sufficiently motivated by just the sustainability, but that doesn't mean they're rejecting it. It's an important piece of the puzzle, but it's not enough alone.
Yeah, and to build on that, we have quantitative surveys, for instance, in food and beverage, saying only 20% of the people are going to buy for this specific dimension. For the others, you have a price which is key. They would buy it if it were less expensive, and some convenience is key. So it's a lot about changing habits.
Yes, and to make the link with the previous question about price, in fact, when you use, for example, an eco pouch in order to refill a product, finally you ask to the consumer to make a different gesture than before. So it's not as easy as before, and it's not okay to pay more for that, because for it's not as easy. And moreover, take another example, when you work a lot in order to make more thin plastic to be lighter and in better sustainable products, in fact, the limit between lighter and eco-conscious and cheaper is so thin. So when you give the impression to be cheaper and not right quality, it's very difficult to accept to pay a little bit more for something that you have the impression that it's not as good as before, in fact.
Thank you, and we will finish on that because we don't have time for any more questions. But thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for the questions. And now I will give the mic back.